Hello, Miss Sanford. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing good. I'm just keeping busy with work and kids.
I know it can be busy, and I'm glad you're here today to go over Cody's test results. Well, as you know, Cody took the Iowa Test of Basic Skills on November 8th, and the test took place over the course of 3 days. This test is an achievement test. Achievement tests are given frequently to see what the child has been learning over the course of their education, and they are more specifically given to see if they are gaining the knowledge each year to ensure that they're ready for next year. Before we begin, I want to highlight that the test is somewhat of a snapshot of Cody's knowledge. Several factors in the classroom also contribute to what they have learned, and I have Cody's portfolio here so you can see how these scores reflect how he's doing in the classroom, okay?
Okay.
At the top of the page are demographics related to your child, and we're going to start by looking at the top portion of this test, which is called the norm reference portion. What this means is that before the test is given to the public, there are several tests given to a norm group of students of different learning abilities, socioeconomic status, race, gender, demographics, etc. This group of students is the national comparison that Cody is compared to. As you see, as you scan the norm reference portion of the results, do you see any questions about the subjects that are being tested?
No.
Great. If you see that you have some questions, as I continue, feel free to ask. The subjects that are broken into categories. You see here that it says core, total, which covers the basics of reading, language, and math. At the bottom, you see composite total, which is a score that contains the core subjects as well as social studies and science. Within all of these subjects are subtests that are included in each of them. An example of a subtest would be how reading total includes vocabulary and reading comprehension. Now, as we look down the norm reference portion of the results, there are several abbreviations for things. Let's start by looking at the first abbreviation, SS. SS is the abbreviation for standard score. Now, if we look at the bell curve handout that I have for you, you can see that there is no label on the side for standard score. This is because they are specific to whatever test is given. So if we wanted to imagine this was on a bell curve, we would have to know the range of the standard score was for this particular test, which for this one it's 181 to 223. If we look down through Cody's scores, if we take the 181 to 223, we can see that it would be 181 to 223. And as we look down Cody's scores, we see that they fall within that range of standard score. What these scores also show us is how reliable the results are. Say if Cody was to take this test again, the score should remain within a +3 or -3 deviation from the test if the test is successful in testing what it aims to each time. As we move over, we see GE, and this stands for grade equivalent. Before we look at the results, the number before the decimal is years, and the number after the decimal is months. And you can look through the scores here.
Okay. I see that Cody is scoring in the 5th grade range on a lot of the subjects. Does this mean that he's ready to go to 5th grade already?
Not necessarily. While these results are excellent, we know that Cody isn't socially and emotionally ready for the content in the next grade, but he is definitely in a great position for understanding what comes next for him in the next grade. As we continue moving over the different scores, you see NS. This stands for National Stanine. This can be found on our bell curve right here. This is just another way to see what your child is learning, and it's probably the simplest way of looking at the test results. As you can see on the bell curve, the stanines are divided into 9 sections. 1 through 3 are below average, 4, 5, and 6 are average, and 7 and above is above average. You can see from Cody's results that he is either scoring average or above average on all of his sections. An example on Cody's test would be where he obtained a 6 on the stanine level in vocabulary. So on the bell curve, this would be about average. The limitations of national stanines are that they tend to be too general, meaning that if we looked at another student's percentile rank, they may be quite different from Cody's, but in stanine scores, they're the same. So you're not really going in depth into what the score represents. Now the final piece of the norm reference portion of the results is the NPR. This stands for National Percentile Rank. Keep in mind that these ranks aren't like school grades where 75 would be a C. Rather, 75 means that Cody scored 75% above the norm group of students that I mentioned earlier. You can take a look at these results and let me know if you have any questions.
No, it's good.
If we look at the bell curve, we can see these percentile equivalents of the percentile ranks. As you can see, 50 would be in the center as the median average. Back on the result sheets, you see a percentile rank graph. This represents the NPR graph. The dark shaded line down the center is the average student score, as we saw in the bell curve, and you can see if Cody scored around or the same or above and below the national average of the norm group. Do you have any questions about this portion of the test?
No.
Now we're going to move down to the criterion reference scores. Instead of comparing Cody's scores to other students, these results assess what he's learning in specific areas of each subject to see if he has mastered them or not. I'm going to let you look at these areas and see if you have any questions.
What is inference and interpretation?
That's a great question. When children are asked to make an inference or interpret something from a text, they have to develop an idea of what the author is saying without the author actually having to say it in the text. An example would be, say, if the author said, Sally was driving down the road and saw flashing lights ahead of her. As she drove closer, she saw an ambulance and a fire truck. In this example, students can interpret that Sally was coming up on a car accident. This is a reading strategy they are very familiar with in the class. If you look through Cody's portfolio, I have specific examples of how he used inferences in his independent reading in class, and then he documented them in his journal. Cody is extremely good at making inferences. Do you have any other questions before I move on?
That's great to hear. I think we covered it.
Great. The first column is very easy, total items. Next is the number attempted by Cody, and as you can see, he puts a great effort into attempting the problems rather than just leaving them blank. Next is the percent correct. This is not a percentile like earlier, but rather it is percent. So for vocabulary, out of the 34 questions he attempted, he got 76% correct. The next column just shows you the percent correct for the norm group, which was 58%. So he scored above the norm group on this particular on vocabulary. To the right, we have a visual of these percents. The shaded area is an average of the norm group, and you can see that he is average and above average on many of the specific areas tested in this evaluation. For example, if we look through, we can see that Cody got 100% on measurement. Does Cody like to measure things a lot at home?
Yes, he does. He likes to help me cook a lot, and I help me measuring the ingredients with the cups.
That's good. I have some assignments here in his portfolio to show how successful Cody has been when we conduct experiments with measurement. There are also some great activities online that you can do at home with Cody, and you can also have him find the perimeter and area of your house with different measuring tools. It seems that he really loves this aspect of hands-on math. As you look down, do you see any more concerns about the scores that Cody has here?
Well, I see that he only scored a 17% on words with affixes. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to help him learn these at home?
There were only 6 questions on the specific area in writing, but they definitely need to be aware of the appropriate affixes. A great way to practice at home is to have them write. Create a journal for them to write in their journal each day, and you can see how they're using the specific skill in writing. You can also show them some great examples in newspapers, magazines, and how affixes are used successfully. The point is to have them practice with these areas, and it'll help them gain the knowledge to master the skill.
I also see that he is above average on a lot of the areas in this test. Are you doing things in the classroom to help keep this going?
Of course. Children are always going to want to be challenged when they have mastered a subject. In math, for instance, I will have a problem of the week that each child can see, and it requires multiple steps to solve, and they oftentimes must use things around the room to solve them. These problem-solving skills are just one way to challenge them in their learning. Do you have any other questions before we finish up here? I know I've given you a lot of information.
No, I can easily explain this to my husband when I get home, but thank you so much.
Before we go, here's a copy of the results along with the handout of the bell curve that we used. And I'm more than delighted to work with Cody this year, and I look forward to seeing what's next for him. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.